So, Senator, let me start with a thank you to you and your staff for partnering with us to pull this together. It was, as the Senator indicated, we didn't start this thought all that long ago, and to see all the faces in the room and all the support, I think really speaks to the importance of the issue. We absolutely at Guy Carpenter support the presentations both by Senator Brandis and Commissioner McCarty, and would agree that the time is now, and the time has never been better to explore public-private partnerships. We say that for several reasons, and I'll go through each of them in some detail. The first is the widening gap between economic and insured losses that we're seeing as large events occur around the world. The second in the U.S. is the growing public sector debt. And the third is the growth in mandatory entitlements as part of that debt. The combination of those three offers a risk landscape that absolutely supports the need and the opportunity to explore alternatives. In this graph, we're capturing the annual trend of both economic and insured losses from 1980 to 2013. We've overlaid two trend lines to that data. The lower yellow line is the 33-year insured loss trend, and the steeper blue line tracks the growth in economic losses over that same period. The disparity between these two trend lines highlights the widening gap between insured loss and economic loss. We see the same phenomenon more specifically as we measure the percentage of total loss insured from some of the larger historical events, from 60% in Hurricane Andrew in 1992 to 50% from KRW, 48% in Ike, and 43% in Superstorm Sandy in 2012. For all of us that represent the insurance and reinsurance industry, we have an obligation to work to close this gap. I would argue that our continued relevance in some geographies around the world actually requires that we close the gap. In the next slide, we're highlighting the challenging financial position of governments, of the U.S. government, through two lenses, both a state and federal view. In the upper right, the state map, or the country map, shows states ranked by long-run solvency. Coastal and/or cat-exposed states, those in yellow, or primarily in yellow, are the most likely to go insolvent. One of the conclusions is that the burden of funding catastrophic loss potential has been and will continue to be a major drain on public resources. At the federal level, at the bottom of the chart, we can see the imbalance of receipts in the blue section of the bar graph and expenditures in the gray. And the red line we're all becoming far too familiar with is the cumulative deficit, from approximately $4 trillion in 2006 to $11 trillion in 2014. The punchline here is that as this financial burden continues to grow, taxpayers will have less ability and willingness to fund unexpected catastrophic loss. The next two slides track the trending of public debt and the components of that debt. In this slide, we see the sobering reality that the Congressional Budget Office estimates that our public debt will account for 74% of GDP by the end of this year. By 2028, we pass 100% of GDP, and levels not seen since the war machine years of the mid-1940s. That acceleration continues and steepens. I feel a bit like I'm repeating some of the messages of the Republican primaries, but there is actually worse news, believe it or not. That worse news is that the magnitude of our debt is made more problematic by the composition of the debt. Here we're tracking the accumulation of the big four components of our public debt: Medicare, Social Security, Medicaid, and interest payments. These four entitlement programs, again, according to the CBO, are projected to consume 100% of our tax revenues by 2031. Not only will we have more debt than revenue, but our hands will largely be completely tied as to what we can do about it. The good news is there is something we can do about it. So while troubling, these points of view are not meant to just depress you. The point is actually to highlight the problem, but with the understanding that we can do something about it. We have options and solutions that through public and private endeavors, as we are contemplating today with flood, can reverse some of these problematic trends. I'd like to turn the stage over to Nikhil Da Victoria Lobo, the head of America Global Partnerships at Swiss Re, to start the conversation on how we can think of next steps and some of the ways forward. Thanks.